Michael Flynn woke up with something of a legal hangover today. It was a pretty extraordinary smackdown there from a federal judge that America saw yesterday. Mueller and Judge Sullivan know more than anyone about what Flynn was caught doing, far more than those of us in the public. So yesterday's hearing revealed that, to some degree, what we're witnessing is a disagreement about the severity of Flynn's crimes and underlying conduct. We know Flynn spoke to Mueller's team 19 times, and we know Mueller was willing to put aside all the terrible stuff that he and his investigators say they caught Flynn doing. But then, as we see, the judge not ready to put it all aside the same way. Now, we don't know, I want to be clear, the full story about what else Flynn was caught doing or allegedly doing, and some of what's written in there is still redacted. But a big question is still, why would Flynn lie about sanctions in his talks with former Russian ambassador Sergei Kislyak?
Why did he lie about his conversations with Kislyak? He could have called him and say, I just want to remind you, Sergei, our government will be in power January 20th, and we'll be reviewing our policy. But why he chose to go farther than that and then lie about it leads me to wonder, why was he lying? I still don't know the answer to that question.
The question there from former U.S. Ambassador McFaul. And tonight there are three sources that are saying they're familiar with this probe, and they're telling the Daily Beast Mueller zeroing in on the sanctions issue, which we've been discussing tonight, and what the Kremlin would hope to get in return from any of those political moves. And then, moments ago, we just got this from the Washington Post reporting Bob Mueller now formally requesting testimony of Roger Stone from the House Intelligence Committee. This is reportedly, at least as far as we know, the first time that Mueller's asked that particular panel for this kind of information for the investigation. I'm joined now by Erin Banco, a national security reporter with the Daily Beast. She also broke this story from Mueller insiders eyeing Trump world concessions to Moscow, which everyone's discussing, and Washington Bureau Chief David Corn. Erin, what does this mean, both your reporting and the latest from the Daily Beast?
Thanks for having me. I think one thing that we know now, based off our three sources and our reporting around the sanctions issue, is that Special Counsel Robert Mueller is sort of zeroing in on other Trump world associates who have had conversations about the possibility of easing sanctions. And we know Mueller is looking at two different time periods here, right? He's looking at the time period before the election and those conversations that happened during the transition. He's trying to tie the two together to see, you know, what went on there and how those conversations even came about in the very first place. And the big question here is, again, why Michael Flynn lied. Now, Mueller's getting out of Michael Flynn's cooperation agreement these other threads that he's been pulling on for about a year now that look at these other Trump world associates. So we're, in the next, month or two, we're going to start to see some answers on this front.
David, what do you think of this basic point that all of America learned yesterday in sort of live TV News Law School, which is sometimes the prosecutor and the judge disagree about fundamental matters, and the judge obviously had a harsher view of Flynn. Is that because, in your analysis of things, the judge knows that we don't, or maybe just his own harsh view of these things? That doesn't mean there's much difference in the underlying conduct.
Well, like a good law school professor, you're giving us questions that we don't really have true answers for. The answer could be either. I mean, material.
But what is
redacted.
due process, David? And come back in an hour.
We'll come back. Use both sides of the page if necessary. We saw in some of the filings that were made public that material was redacted that the judge did have access to. Was that material what triggered him? Was it just that he knew a little bit more about this stuff and was giving the prosecutors a hard time? I mean, to Erin's story and to the question that you started with, we at Mother Jones reported last week, and the Washington Post reported a year ago, overlapping stories about Michael Flynn having conversations with Sergei Kislyak before the election.
Right.
And perhaps they even had to do with sanctions and policy matters that would happen if Trump got elected.
So what are we talking about? Are we talking about auctioning off U.S. sanctions policy for personal enrichment, or are we talking about payback for prior election conspiracies?
Or it could just be, we want to work with you on Syria, and then we're happy to talk about sanctions if you're positive. But whatever, doing that with Sergei Kislyak while Russia was attacking the United States raises all sorts of issues, right? We can see that. And so if Flynn has really told all to Mueller about any contacts of his own or others between Trump's campaign or crew and Russia, that would be really valuable, and that is probably not information that the judge has fully, because Mueller's really keeping a tight wrap on anything like that. So that might explain why there's a disparity between how Mueller is looking at Flynn and how the judge is looking at Flynn.
Yeah, or Aaron, Mueller might be super pragmatic and be all about getting to his goal, and the judge may have some wider interests. I want to read more from your reporting, which is pretty fascinating. You say Mueller's preparing court filings that could detail Trump associates' conversations about sanctions relief and spell out how those offers and counterproposals were characterized to top figures on the campaign and in the administration. Why would that matter?
So I think what's important to note here about the sanctions conversation is at the time that these conversations were happening, Russia was at a point where it had sort of insulated its economy in a sense that it could handle the sanctions that were already put in place from 2014. But what it was really looking for was not only maybe some relief, but no more sanctions, perhaps knowing what might be coming in regard to the investigation for the interference in the 2016 election.
And briefly,
so this is
while I got you, Aaron, because you're sourced up on this, your view of the Roger Stone news, is that a bad sign for him?
Yeah, I think this is a really bad sign for Roger Stone. I'm surprised that Mueller didn't have this document sooner, but I think we're going to start to see things roll pretty quickly here in the next couple of days.
It's also a bad sign for Donald Trump Jr. if Mueller's going to start looking at testimony and whether there was any false statements made.
David Corn and Aaron Bronco from Washington all over this story. Thanks to both of you. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.